2016. I was making my way home from a meeting. When I arrived back in town, I noticed the streets were quiet and everyone seemed to be fast asleep in their homes. It was a clear night and I wondered if I would be able to catch a few hours of sleep before I had to be at work again. Driving along a downtown street, I soon approached the local jail. Something ahead of me in the road caught my attention and I brought my truck to a stop. It looked as though a cloud of gas or fog was crossing the street. I thought this was odd because it was such a clear night. The fog was a grayish-white color that you could see through. I strained my eyes at the weird apparition and thought that it almost had a human form, although it floated above the ground, hurrying along as if it were late for something. Suddenly, the top of the foggy figure turned towards me and I could make out a hollow face which appeared to be that of a faint skull. "Oh!" I said, jumping, the hair standing up on my arms and neck. The figure also seemed to jump as though it did not see me come upon it. Looking at me with an aggravated expression, the foggy mass picked up the pace and floated along even quicker, disappearing just on the other side of the jailhouse. What have I just seen? I thought to myself. Could I have been mistaken? Surely it wasn't what I thought it was. Making my way back home, I tried to put the thought of the Reaper-like figure out of my mind. A few hours of sleep and I had forgotten all about the incident until I was reminded again the next morning when I arrived at work. I would learn that there were 3 deaths that took place that night in town. All victims died suddenly in their sleep. Could I have witnessed an angel of death on his way to take a soul? It is certainly a thought that I have not been able to shake over these past few years. In the year 2019, Emil was driving his car to a town called Triangle in Zimbabwe. It was in the dead of night and he noticed that he needed gas, so he pulled into a place called Croco Motors to fill up. As Emil was about to pull out of the station, he saw a woman standing in the parking lot. She was very pretty and had a light and fair complexion. Emil asked the pretty lady if she would like a ride somewhere. She said she was going to Triangle and he said he just happened to be going there, too. Emil talked to the lady along the way, but she was very quiet. She only answered him occasionally with a word or two. He thought perhaps she was just shy, but when an oncoming car's lights shined into his car, he saw something horrific. The lady had what looked to be 1,000 stitches on her face. Terrified, Emil fumbled for his cell phone. He quickly faked a call and hung up. Pulling the car over to the side of the road, he looked at the lady and her bloody stitches with fear. "I am no longer going to Triangle," he said. "I now have to go somewhere else. You will be safe here and will find a ride." The stitched-together lady looked at Emil and with a sudden spark, burst into dust before him. Emil quickly found his gas pedal and sped down the highway until he came to a town called Buffalo. There he regained his wits and spent the night before continuing his journey. To this day, Emil is still left with haunting thoughts of the woman. Who was she? Could she have been a ghost, and why did she have all of those stitches? As Mr. Dixon, a local worker in Jarrow, England, sat with his family on a summer night in 1957, he was stricken with fear when he watched a finger appear from out of nowhere and draw a zigzag line across his living room wall. Trying to make sense of what he and his family just witnessed, his wife screamed as an unseen force began to prod her in the neck with its fingers. 2 nights later, the couple were awakened as the covers from their bed were violently ripped off and thrown across the room while they slept. As Mr. Dixon went to retrieve them, his wife sat up in panic and revealed to her husband that they were not alone. "I feel its cold, clammy breath breathing down my neck at this very moment. We must leave. Get the children." For 5 nights the Dixons tried to stay at the home but were forced to leave each time. Unsure of what to do, they summoned the local police, who seemed to be familiar with the problem. It wasn't the first time that a poltergeist had been reported at the house, and they knew it was a spiritual matter. Before long, they returned to the home with the Bishop of Jarrow, J.A. Ramsbotham. "It's just a matter of cleansing," the odd little man stated as he walked about the house performing a blessing ritual. "Oh yes, They are the mischievous ones, aren't they? Not to worry, we'll soon be rid of them and you folks can get some rest. Once the ritual was complete, the Dixons were said to be rid of the ghosts and were able to live in the home at peace. There are many different ways of ridding a ghost from a home. Some people claim you can spread salt about to get rid of the spooky pests. Others will try a more drastic measure, such as tearing down the home, as was done with the mansion of Dr. Mills. In 1915, Dr. Mills was a well-known spiritualist who perished aboard the Titanic. Many unusual rituals and seances were held in his home during his life, and although he no longer inhabited the home, several spirits did. They were known to knock on the walls at night and moan throughout the house. The new owner couldn't keep a tenant for more than a week and was losing money. Tired of the complaints, the landlord vowed to spend 2 nights in the house himself. After the second night, he had the house demolished. Underneath the home was found a slate that spiritualists used to write on as they communicated with the dead. A name was written on the slate in crude letters that said, Dr. Mills. Some ghosts haunted houses by long distance. They were getting in however they could. Author Cosmo Hamilton stated in 1935 that he often received phone calls from the dead. He said he would sit by his telephone at night and wait for it to ring. On the other end would sometimes be many of his long-dead friends, anxious to chat with him until the early morning hours. Hamilton, like Dr. Mills, was also a spiritualist and believed in communication with the dead. Ghosts come in many forms and in several different places throughout the world. Many people have never heard the name Sunai Suan, but he was a great friend to the American people who were stationed in China during the early 20th century. Mr. Suan discovered that the American legation in Peking was haunted by a soldier that was killed in 1900 during a battle. The soldier was said to return to his room at night and was often seen by the other soldiers. Mr. Suan wrote a letter to the Americans there and explained to them the proper ways of ridding the ghost. He instructed the men to remove the roof from the dead soldier's room and leave it exposed to the rain and sunlight for 10 days. After this time, the roof was to be replaced and they would have no more ghost troubles. I hope this will help, Mr. Suan said in his letter. As foreigners may not be familiar with the proper method of handling ghosts in China. And well, on that note, we must end today's video. I hope you enjoyed watching it, and if you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more. Take care, and I'll see you guys in the next one.